I won't run from the crushing. I'll hold on through the pain. What I lose means nothing next to what I gain. Come tear down every idol so this heart won't stray. Don't let me stray. I just wanna be your sanctuary, a dwelling place for grace and mercy. Keep sifting me till.
And Boker Tov, everybody. Welcome to the Threshing Floor here on lamnetwork.tv. I am Darryl Weinberg, and it is great to be with you this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I am your host today, and we are here to discuss what goes on the threshing floor and what does not. It is a gloomy day out there today, and it is gloomy in the world as it continues to hurtle towards some cataclysmic event. But we are here to discuss the things of the Lord, and I am going to switch my chair. You'll have to excuse me as I was scrambling to get a computer working here because mine was not connecting to the internet, so I had to run and grab my wife's. So what I was on my heart to discuss today is this past week, obviously there was a very, very significant election in New York City for the mayor's race. And what was interesting is that you had a couple of candidates who were the leaders. Now, Curtis Sliwa he was the Republican candidate, and he is the founder of the Guardian Angels, which was a very significant group in New York City back in the 80s and 90s, where because of the complete breakdown of the just everything that happened in New York. After Ed Koch was the mayor, I think it was David Dinkins after that, and things just spiraled out of control. New York was a mess. And this was before Rudy Giuliani came in and cleaned up things. So the Guardian Angels, of course, with the Red Berets, and they would walk around and they were essentially mercenaries that enforced the law. So if anybody was in trouble, muggings, things like that, they would intervene. And they gained quite a reputation. Well, what was interesting is that when Sliwa was running for the mayorship, he wasn't giving any press time whatsoever. He wasn't even considered a candidate. So that tells you something that was going on. Now, I don't know anything about his administrative abilities or anything like that, but he did run a fairly successful organization. So you're left with two candidates. And what was, fascinating about this is that you had Zoran Mamdani, who is a 34-year-old out of nowhere guy. I mean, it's the same thing as Barack Obama. Okay. And we know that Mamdani had some very big backers and he was given all kinds of press time. But essentially, this guy, his parents his dad anyway, it was a professor at, and I can't remember where, it might have been Columbia University in New York, but I don't know. But he is a university professor. And mom is also a professional, and both parents are quite radical Islamists. So, they put this guy out, and he's all dressed up in a suit and everything else. But the reality is that he should really be wearing jihadi clothing because he is a staunch supporter of Hamas, and he is also, interestingly enough, a communist. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. So, New York City, I am frozen. Okay. It's not frozen over on this end here. Let's see here. Is it going to work? No, it's not. Bob, can you see me okay there? It might be Terry's computer there. But anyway, so the other guy that they were putting forth as a viable alternative is Andrew Cuomo. And Andrew Cuomo ran for the Democratic nomination, lost to Momdani, and so therefore he entered the race as a third-party alternative candidate. Now, you don't have to have very long memory to know who Andrew Cuomo is. He's the son of Mario Cuomo, who was the governor of New York back in the 80s. And Cuomo was governor during COVID and ran one of the most disastrous administrations when COVID hit. New York was under more stringent lockdowns than most places. And they had these policies of putting people into nursing homes and things like that when they were obviously sick, and thousands upon thousands of people died. And people were prevented from seeing loved ones and everything else. I mean, it was disastrous. And then, of course, he had to resign because there were many, many accusations of sexual misconduct. The guy is a complete reprobate. He is a disaster as a politician. And yet he was being put forth as an alternative candidate. Oh, Momdani is so extreme that we're going to go with Cuomo, who is he's a terrible human being. And those were the only two people that were getting any kind of press coverage. So what is going on in New York? Well, from a spiritual perspective, and this is what we do on the threshing floor, we kind of look behind the scenes to see what's going on, is that there is severe judgment on New York. And there was a video I watched, and I don't know who it came from because I follow all these news channels on social media. But someone had posted a video that you may remember that there was the U.S., I think it was the $1 bill. It could have been the $10 bill, $20 bill. But when you would fold it in a certain way, it showed a picture of the Twin Towers coming down and full of smoke. So basically what they were doing is they were telling you what was going to happen with 9/11. Well, a new bill has come out. And again, I don't even know where I would find this. I suppose if we looked it up, we could. But there's a new bill that, again, if you fold it up, it shows New York City being hit by a tidal wave or a tsunami because with missiles coming into New York Harbor. So New York is being prophesied of being hit by a nuclear strike that's going to take it out. And if you look at what's happened with Momdani as being elected and the chaos that he is going to unleash on New York City, there is clear judgment that has come upon New York. But what I wanted to kind of back up with and talk about is, what do Charles Russell, Joseph Smith and what's his name? I just lost it. Karl Marx all have in common. Okay, so Karl Marx, writer of the Communist Manifesto with Frederick Engels, and they are really the fathers of modern day communism. You have Joseph Smith, obviously the founder of Mormonism, and Charles Russell is the founder of the Jehovah's Witnesses, so two of the major cults in the world today. What do all three of those men have in common? They are all Freemasons. So when you look at Momdami, he is a communist and a Muslim. Classical communism is in contradiction to Islam because one of the elements or essences of communism is that it is very dogmatic about the fact that there is no God. It is evolutionary. And so what you have is the state really becomes the God. And if you look at especially North Korea, but also China, you are not allowed to proclaim allegiance to any other god except the state, and specifically the premier. So how is it that Momdami, who is clearly a Muslim and is a communist, he's talking about redistribution of wealth, and you've already got New Yorkers who are fleeing left, right, and center because of what this guy is going to do. And what's real interesting is that New York has the second largest population of Jews in the world outside of any city except Tel Aviv, and I'm not even sure what the population of Jerusalem is. But there's about 1.7 million Jews in New York City. And so here you've got this jihadist, this Momdami, who refuses to condemn Hamas. His father actually wrote an article on the fact that suicide bombings really shouldn't be looked at as some sort of brutality, but a legitimate means of protest. Like, are you kidding me? And yet the media fawned all over him. There was there was an article written about Momdami where a lot of celebrities were promoting him. And you had even Emily Ratajkowski, who is a model and a woman who is known strictly and exclusively for her good looks. She has no other talents as far as we're aware of. Now, everybody's got talents and everything else, but she has made all of her fame and all of her money on the fact that she's beautiful. And she was actually in a commercial, I guess, and wore a shirt that said "Hot Girls for Momdami." And he's standing behind her and he's got this big grin on his face. And I was thinking, doesn't Ratajkowski know that jihadis kill beautiful women and don't let them flaunt? I mean, Ratajkowski's, gone out in very skimpy outfits, and she got her fame actually started in the music video Blur, which was by I can't remember his name. I'm brain's a little fuzzy this morning. But anyway, it was a famous music video. And in it, there were a bunch of women who were dancing around the singer topless. They didn't see anything, but they were topless. And she was one of those dancers. And in an Islamic country, I mean, there's no way she would be able to have any kind of career whatsoever doing what she does. So how is it, I ask, that all of these people have been brainwashed into supporting this guy? I mean, he's not even hiding what he believes. And that New Yorkers, they came out and voted for him in droves, 50% of the vote. And Cuomo got like about 30 something, and then Curtis Sliwa got 20%. Okay, he's way back at the back end. It was really only dedicated Republicans who voted for this guy. How is it that this happened? How is it that a guy who is a contradiction in that he's a communist but a Muslim, which are not compatible with each other, because pure communism is all about the state being God, and that you have to worship the state, that you're not allowed to be you're not allowed to make a profession to any other God. And yet here he is saying, he's talking about the redistribution of wealth. So he's a communist as far as economics is concerned, but not on the social side of things. And as I said, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels were not atheists themselves. So they talk about religion being the opiate of the masses, and yet as a high-ranking Freemason, he would have dedicated and made profession of faith to the great architect of the universe that we know within Freemasonry is Lucifer. Hello.
Hello. Decided I would join you today because this is a topic that, well, I have some practical experience
you
with.
do, and we're going to get to that in a moment. So,
yeah, I know you're giving the background first, so go ahead. And
so you have Karl Marx as and Friedrich Engels, who are Freemasons. They worship Satan, and at the higher levels of Freemasonry, they have to pledge allegiance to Lucifer. Okay, especially when you become 33rd, and it is a not so hidden thing that men like Billy Graham and Franklin Graham are high-ranking Freemasons, and Billy Graham even is suggested to have been a 33rd, although no one's ever been able to come out and confirm that. But it's pretty well known. So you've got this Momdani character, okay, and he's a communist, but he's a Muslim, and Islam, as we determined through my study on the Book of Revelation last year, Islam was actually created by the Catholic Church. It was the Vatican that actually wrote the Quran, because Muhammad's wife and her uncle, who was his mentor, were both Catholics. And if you look at the Quran, it's clear. It's got the Vatican's fingerprints all over it. There's entire chapters dedicated. Mary is talked about more than Yeshua. Isn't that interesting? And Yeshua is talked about much more than, what's his name, Muhammad. But so you've got these supposedly competing ideologies that have suddenly been merged together in this guy who has now been brought forth. And he has been brought forth for one thing and one thing only, and that is to destroy New York City, to bring it to economic ruin. Because if you're going to take down the United States, now what is the plan of the globalists? And who was Momdani supported by? He was funded by Soros, George and Alex Soros, of the Open Media Foundation and all these other things. So you've got these World Economic Forum bigwigs who are intent on destroying Western culture and society and bringing it under the Antichrist system, which is being set up at a lightning pace right now. I mean, listen, you got to understand what's going on out there. And what I'm not going to hit you, don't worry. you've got to see what's going on and why this is being allowed. Because if you're going to take down the United States and bring the entire world under the reign of the Antichrist, and the goal is to get them Agenda 2030, when you've got the UN sustainability goals and all this stuff, 2030 is the target year to bring all of Western society and culture down and shift it over to the one world government. That's where they're aiming for. And so in order for you to be able to do that in the United States, you got to take down New York, because New York is, of course, the financial capital of North America. London also is a major player there. So we don't know which one's more important, but that's the point. So, but my question is that for the average New Yorker who voted for this guy, and you might as well have taken a gun and played Russian roulette, except you put every chamber full, because he is going to destroy New York City, and it's going to be rapid. But how is it that the average person can say that communism is a good thing and the redistribution of wealth? And when people are asked, well, who's going to pay for this? And they're going to tax the rich, and not understanding that the rich are already greatly. Now, there are a select segment of the rich that, of course, are exempt, but they're the ones who control the political process. And so there's no way that you're actually going to tax the people who do make the most money. But when you talk about taxing the rich, the people who are making, $100,000 or $500,000 a year, or even $1 million a year, they already pay a greater percentage of taxes than anybody else. Mm-hmm. With this whole government shutdown that's been going on now, the big thing that they're talking about, well, one of the big things, is the fact that food stamps are no longer available. The vast number of people in the United States already don't pay very much tax, or at all, and they're on social assistance and welfare. And so now what's happened with this orchestrated government shutdown, they have now eliminated the food stamps and the welfare program, because the ultimate objective is that they want to make people dependent upon the state and eventually get rid of them. If you don't understand that these globalists think that there's too many people in the world, you haven't been listening to what Bill Gates has been saying. You haven't been listening to what men like Ted Turner have said. You haven't been listening to what even King Charles and Prince William have said, that the world is overpopulated. And so in order to save the world, they have to kill off a whole bunch of humanity. So how is it that the average person can say that communism is a good thing? Now, you grew up in communism. You came here when you were about 15. So that's 5-6 years ago. Yeah. And when you came here, what was it that you and your family first noticed about how the Canadian system works?
So coming from communism and being used to being restricted and the government telling you what to do and not allowing you to make any free choices whatsoever, we came to Canada, and I think a lot of immigrants are coming now, and they're seeing it more obviously than there was. It's 30 years ago, over 30 years ago. And we saw that, on paper, the law said you have freedom, you are permitted to do things, but there were always caveats and conditions.
Yeah.
It's going to either cost you money to be able to do what you believe you're free to do, or you have to fulfill this condition and that condition, which is almost close to impossible. And so we realized there is an illusion of freedom, but really there are more restrictions than freedoms. And but again, because Canada was still a country where you had more opportunities, you were still allowed to do things. At least people were pretending that they're giving you freedom. So you just came to learn the system and work with it. So our skills of understanding the system and how to work with it or around it, or just with it to get what you want, we applied those skills, and but we realized quickly exactly that there's no real freedom in the sense of like there, freedom without restrictions to the personal rights.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing that really, really surprised me was that actually, so this girl in the high school and we became good friends, and she was quite fascinated by my story because she was actually reading Karl Marx and Lenin and all these books, and she was fascinated by communism, and so she wanted to ask me questions, and she thought it was a great idea because the whole equality and so forth. And
now, just give a little background on her parents.
Well, her parents were hippies, really, in the 60s and the 70s, and so they were all about freedom, and so they were all about personal rights and so forth. Now, her dad had adopted Hinduism as a religion, again because it was something that was popular in the 60s, and also because it was a humanistic religion. So, and again, like you're talking about someone who follows the Muslim religion as a communist. Well, here I had a friend who was a Hindu and a communist. So it seems like
and Hinduism's got all kinds of gods.
So and that's the thing, there's constant contradiction, but really what Hinduism gives you is finding the truth within yourself, and so you feel like you're free to explore and to create your reality. And so and I simply said to my friend, yes, in the books probably it looks good, everybody being equal, everybody contributing to the common good, but it ignores human nature. And human nature is that we are selfish and we want for ourselves more than we want for others. And that's why the Bible has to say, esteem one another above yourself.
Yeah, the only place that communism actually does work in the world is on the Israeli kibbutz system, where you have small communities and everybody comes there with the agreement that they're going to submit themselves to the greater good of the community. You cannot enforce it, and you certainly can't create a political thing out of it, because if you look at what's his name, Fidel Castro, who was he and Che Guevara, they created this whole revolution within Latin America, and Cuba has been communist for 70 years now. Castro had something like 20 properties around the world.
Well, and this is the next thing I was going to talk about. And really, because I grew up in communist country, I didn't have access to Western literature. I mean, we did read the Odyssey, like we did read Greek mythology and then a lot of Russian influence. But when I came and I ended up reading Animal Farm, my mouth opened wide because how do they know communism so well? And really, the pigs who ended up
Animal Farm was written by George Orwell, who wrote 1984.
1984, and George Orwell, So I ended up reading that. And see, my friends saw Animal Farm as utopia. I saw that as dystopia.
Well, clearly, how could you look at that as utopia? And it was the pigs that took over, and that's not surprising.
So, but the other thing that she had is then as she started kind of heading towards anarchy, as she and I had more discussions. But you see, that's the thing. When your beliefs are founded on emotion and something that sounds good, then they can change it. They could be feeble. And so this is the idea of communism, because I watched also, communist politicians and people who were in key positions in government. They did have a lot of money. We knew they did. So they were exactly like the pigs in the Animal Farm. And, everybody, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Yeah. And so actually when communism went down in Eastern Europe, there were these big mentions and these properties that belonged to the communist politicians and rulers. And so it was very, very unfair. And so as soon as someone gets a whiff of having power over people, they will
Exploit it.
exploited. They will start, unless they serve God. But that's the other thing. In communism, you are not allowed to read the Bible. All kinds of spirituality, like palm readers and horoscopes, that was allowed. Occult stuff was allowed. But I had my great grandmother talk to me about Jesus, about the Bible, and she said, don't tell anyone, because she knew she would have been hurt, she would have been arrested. Like, it was brutal. And so you are not allowed to teach young people about God. So here you are put into really abusive situation, and God is not allowed. Now, God always managed to reach the people because the Holy Spirit always works. But most of the people did not have God. And so, psychological problems started arising, and people became really psychopaths, some of them, the ones that were sold for the system. So I told my friend, I said, it doesn't work. Before we left, actually, Eastern Europe, we were on coupon system. We each family got certain amount of food allocated to them. The only caveat was that when the system was going down, production was going down. And so what happened is you could be holding a coupon in your hand, but if it's not in the store, then you're left with nothing to eat.
Yeah.
So that's the other illusion of the government taking care of yourself. It's really restricting you, and really, out of luck if there's no food to fulfill your coupon that you had for the month. So, and one thing, we did reach an agreement that the kibbutz is the only place where communism works. And that's because when the only way people contribute to society is if it's small scale, because it directly affects them. If I do this, I will get this in return, and you will see that. But to have a whole country enforce communism in what they call equality, it doesn't work, because what happens in another region of the country doesn't affect you. And you ask yourself, why should I care about working for the sake of those people who are in no way in contact with me? So, and unfortunately, what I'm seeing right now in Canada is this, well, in North America, really, another thing that really struck us when we came to North America was the whole individualism. Community was really not what we were used to, community being in Eastern Europe. Family was very important in Eastern Europe. Here in Canada, families falling apart. I know I come from a divorced family, and yet I was raised by grandparents. Family stepped in, even if family, and because of communism, family was starting to break apart in Eastern Europe, but family was still very important. And the only way we survived communism and what they did to us was because of family, because of people, close knit group that you can rely on. And we grew our own food. Everybody actually did have land, a small amount of land to grow their own food. And then we had markets where we would exchange, produce and things like that. So, so this is one of the things I see people are starting, because, in Canada, everything is becoming more communist. So people are starting to produce more of their own food. The problem is, though, we are more individualistic. And actually, I have said in a previous show, but I'll say it again today. I saw a video by a man who is, I guess, part of an organization that creates communities and sustainability. But his video said self-sufficiency is an illusion. You cannot make sure your family is okay and just grow enough food for your family. He says you become a slave to providing what you need for your family, because there's no way you can produce what you can provide to sustain your family unless you're part of a community where you exchange goods and services. You are you have an illusion of self sustainability, and that's one thing people need to understand. You cannot come to sustain a self sustainability from a individualistic point of view, because then you're they gotcha. You see, the power is in the numbers, and unless people, now that we're seeing communism coming here in North America, and I know a lot of people, immigrants from Eastern Europe that lived through communism, they're warning people, unless you form a society that is close knit and based on trust and exchange of goods and services, the strength is only in the numbers. The strength has got nothing to do of how many skills about growing food you have, raising animals, building your own houses. You cannot do it on your own. And the Bible says that we are not to forsake the assembling of others. We are not to live in isolation. That is a selfish thing that the Western society has to overcome in order for it to be able to brace itself for the communism that's being pushed on us.
Well, and like I was talking about in my message yesterday on the Ruach HaMet broadcast, and if you haven't seen that, you can go here on Lamb Network or go to our YouTube or Rumble channels. But I was speaking about prosperity from a biblical perspective, and how Zig Ziglar, who is the leadership expert and motivational speaker and all this stuff, he said that there are really 4 levels that we operate at. You've got survival, you've got stability, you've got success, and then you've got significance. And a lot of people, they go from survival to success or to stability, and that's where they want to stop, because I've got enough to meet my needs now. I don't have to push any harder, because to go from stability to success requires a lot of effort. You've got to get momentum going, and you have to have systems in place. If you're going to build a successful company or franchise or something like that, it takes a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that.
No, because we have had abundance, and our motivation has, like, if you're okay, if you have no need, in order for you to achieve anything great, you have to have a big dream, a big need, or a desire to do it. And the reason, actually, what I was going to say, a lot of immigrants from Eastern Europe that came here in North America, they were highly educated, highly motivated, because for us, having skills and education was not just something nice to have on your wall, but it was a matter of survival for us. If you did not educate yourself, if you did not obtain skills that would make you useful to society, you were not considered a good contributing member to society. Right. And then you would not be really taken care of by society.
So where, communists, especially in Eastern Europe, because Eastern Europe has always had a good work ethic and valued education. But when you have communism that's been spread throughout Africa, that's a whole different story down there. And the reason why the Africans suffer so much is because they've got this same socialist or communist ethos at the same time as not valuing education. And so you have a bunch of people with no real skills that are being totally controlled by the government. So what ends up happening is they resort to what? Theft,
lying, cheating,
stealing. And so, one of the things that we've been
begging,
one immense amount of it.
Yes.
And, having spent 2 months in Africa and Uganda this summer, and Uganda, even of the African countries, is considered one of the most corrupt.
Yeah.
When you compare it with the other African countries, it's ridiculous. And yet there is so much abundance and wealth there. And I asked God back last year when I was there, I said, why are they begging so much when they've got all these resources? And God says, because they don't have the language of excellence. And the language of excellence only comes through biblical principles. Now, you can be ungodly and still apply the principles of success.
Success principles. Ungodly people can glean on success principles, and they, in some sense, take God's principles and apply them to their lives. They just twist them. I mean, Satan has created nothing new. He just follows God's principles. He just turns it to work for his benefit.
Right, exactly. So you have people who, what are some of the values of what the Bible says? Well, it's sacrifice for others. It's hard work. It is doing with humility, all these things. And when you apply those things, the beautiful thing is that the laws of success are blind. They don't care who applies them. They will work for anybody who does apply them. And so what you got with Mamdani, the reason why he was so appealing is because, first of all, they have worked very hard at cratering the U.S. economy, right? And
a lot more people are in need nowadays. So somebody comes around and says, we're going to provide social services and assistance. People go for that because they've come to the point where they can't provide for themselves.
Yeah. And it has become a necessity, but instead of overthrowing the system that has impoverished you to begin with, you go up to it and you beg it for it to save you.
Yes.
And so it goes back to the Hegelian dialectic, which is you create the problem initially, you offer the solution that to the problem you created, and then you get people to go to where they would not have wanted to go on their own, whether it be disarming themselves or, I mean, if you look at what happened with COVID and the whole, here in Canada, we had CERB, CERB, which was it was a social assistance program where they gave you free money.
$2,000 a month for you to stay home.
Stay home.
And
because we're not going to allow you to work anyway.
Yeah.
But then what ended up happening is people found out that they end up having to pay it back. So they wouldn't allow us to work, and then they gave us a loan that they ended up charging us back for.
Only certain people had to pay it back. I
Yes.
mean, I did take it because I did lose, like I was working with children, so I did lose income.
Yeah.
But at the end, as soon as I was employed, I stopped it. Some people continued.
Yes.
And so the government eventually started doing investigation, and people had to pay it back. But that's what happens. The government creates poverty mentality and welfare thinking, and then the people start being corrupt because there's no motivation for them to do something good for society or for themselves
if you're not going to be rewarded by it.
And so now evil reigns just because of the conditions. Now people can rise above it, but if people are not reading their Bibles, and here in Canada, I mean, it's appalling at how the churches are empty, or they don't read their Bibles, even if they're full, you know. And so if we don't live by biblical principles, that's what happens. And a lot of people are noticing there's a lot more divorce in our society. There are a lot more homeless people who are begging. So we are becoming beggars now as a society. It is coming here, and it is because of the conditions. So people, and this is another thing I heard recently. Somebody I'm friends with on Facebook, and she said, I'm no longer protesting because protesting is begging the government to change their mind and to fulfill our needs. That doesn't work because that's not what the government is interested in.
No.
And I don't even understand. I understand people are still voting, but I hope they're realizing that really whoever you elect doesn't really make a big difference.
No.
Because really there's an agenda running, and politicians can tell you anything, promise you anything, and they can turn around and say, oh, well, we couldn't do that because of this, and there's conditions and there's events being created where, we have to take different measures now than what we originally planned. So this is a time for us, and a scripture that comes to my head, to my mind is, be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. So we should not be compromising the moral standards of the Bible in our lives, but we have to be wise as serpents. We have to be really paying attention. This is something God's been emphasizing to you and I. We have to be really paying attention, and we have to really make sure that we don't open ourselves to the enemy's cunning schemes. And so what's happening in New York that you're talking about is people are really voting on ideology. We don't even know if the person elected was really voted for by popular vote, because that is the other thing that has been happening. All kinds of changes in the system and the voting system that kind of throws things in certain favor.
There's no legitimate elections really anymore in Western society. The whole system has been hijacked and corrupted, and now you have people who are appointed; they're not elected. The whole thing that back in January, for instance, here in Canada, Pierre Poilievre was expected to have a supermajority. And then all of a sudden, we have Mark Carney who gets shifted in because Trudeau stepped out just at the right time. And then you have the whole tariff thing. And it's like, oh, well, we need someone who is going to be able to stand up to Donald Trump And in the meantime, Trump and Carney are
Carney
business buddies.
Carney has achieved nothing for Canada, being tough in front of before Trump. But as you were talking about this, I was just thinking again about the baseball game, the World Series baseball game that you and I watched, and it seems like we were going in the right direction, and it was all promising, and people's hopes were up. The things are going to be going in favor of the Toronto Blue Jays, and all of a sudden things flipped and switched. And our network, even that we were watching, changed, and it was interesting how. And this is why God, through that, watching that baseball game, and I don't like sports. Darryl's been trying to get me to watch sports since we were dating. I don't like it, but I felt, okay, this is a game I will allow in my household, for us, instead of doing something else as a family. And I watched it, and God spoke to me so much in the spiritual. He just said, you got to pay attention. You got to be wise. You cannot be even... believing the things that are presented to you if they're not coming from godly people, because things will get switched on you just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what is happening. So people in New York probably were voting for something that they're hoping that it's going to relieve the pressure, but they're going to get more pressure.
Oh my God.
Because communism is not easy on the people. That equality is an illusion. Nobody thinks that they're equal really deep inside. Everybody, and we're equal before God, but we are gifted differently, and we have a different role, and we can't all be treated the same. I remember my mother was a dentist. She had to go to university to have a university degree, and she said, I got the same salary as a manual laborer in the construction industry, and really people who do not have internal motivation had no motivation to get education, to acquire any skills, or to do anything. And the only way really anybody wanted to accomplish anything was the recognition. The different motivations that people have. One is money, one is recognition, one is what was the other one? Success or legacy, and so forth. And the only reason my mother really went through schooling, because again, you have to remember, she grew up as a hippie, the hippie ages, and it was all about partying and rock and roll and all that stuff. The only reason she was motivated, first of all, family demanded that their children would achieve and be educated, but the other thing was recognition was still something, and really I keep talking about the fact that we had an economy that was outside of the government economy, where people exchange goods and services with one another, as shaking hands, and being outside of the system that they participated. So my mother had a day job as a dentist, and in the evenings she would sometimes go to people's homes and check their teeth or whatever, and they would provide us with food or whatever. Like, you had to do something. You have to do something, and this is what we have to do. And in a system where we've been having welfare, we've been having food banks, even food banks are starting to run out of food.
Yep.
And people are needing donations. We're seeing more people begging, more homeless people.
I saw a guy on the street the other day, and he had a big sign, and it says, carpenter and framer looking for work. So he's out there promoting himself. Now he's still trying to get work. He's not begging for money, but he's got no work left.
See, and that's the thing. In the old days, you used to hand in a resume to get jobs, and it seems like, and listen, this is one thing I encounter working for the government as a public school teacher. I realized that my education means nothing. My qualifications, my experience means nothing. It is who you know, who you're connected to, and the corruption is big here. And it really set me off that I escaped communism and I walked into a system that is really walking towards communism.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to wake up, and we have to be willing to roll up our sleeves and work, because the politicians are not going to save us. Even some of the church leaders are not really there for the people. And really, it's the church leaders, those who God has given the shepherd role over the people, are supposed to be really stepping in and giving the hope of the people, creating those communities, creating this network where the people within the community are being helped. And I even spoke to a lady who's a secretary in a church the other day, and she said, the people in our church are getting old and there's no new people coming in. We have to go and reach out to the community. The community is waiting someone to reach out to them. And we just have 2 old people who can't even physically go out and reach out to anyone. So it is not up to the government to help us. As a matter of fact, they have demonstrated, especially here in Canada, that the voice of the people, the demonstrations and the protests mean nothing to them. In the United States, there's constant riots and things, and all that is really bringing to is brutality in the police. And it's really not achieving anything. So we need to be building, not protesting and destroying, and really not putting any hopes in the communism, in the political system. But communism is an illusion. It doesn't work, and it will not work for those who think.
So all those
people,
it
will help them be equal.
All those people in New York who thought Mondami was going to be their savior, and what he is promoting is, first of all, there are liberal Jews who actually voted for this guy. And liberal Jews have to be one of the stupidest species on the face of this earth. It's
contradiction, but it's blindness. It's extra level of blindness.
And they will continue to do things that are against their own best interest. They will support people who openly hate them, and they don't care. And this is something that October 7th taught a lot of people who were in the kibbutzim that were attacked, that many of them thought that the people on the other side that they worked with were their friends because they supported them.
There were kibbutz that were attacked that were actually providing like food and
medical care
for the people, and they were trying to form friendships with people in Gaza, and I think it's in Gaza, right? And you see, they thought they had friendship until things turned around. And again, if things are not based on God's wisdom and God's leading, things can turn around on you because
you can't replace a hateful ideology with human relationships. Sometimes you may be able to break through, but the reality is that Islam, because it is also a fear-based religion,
and fear is a lot stronger than trust.
Yes. So, if you're not going to support the Islamic ideals, then you're in trouble of judgment. And when it's infused with hatred toward others, especially Jewish people, it is a toxic combination that no amount of friendly gestures by Jewish people are going to be able to overcome.
And listen, kindness is a good thing, but again, we have to do it with wisdom. Again, gentle as dove and wise as serpents. And I know when I first became a believer in God, and the Lord said to me, first of all, who are you going to please, people or me? We have to please God first, and people are something. And God said, you cannot please people. You cannot please those who come against you. Only I can fulfill them and make them happy. So you pray for those who come against you. Yes, be kind to them, but do not put yourself in a position where you're vulnerable, or you have to compromise your faith and beliefs because you want to make them happy. We need to really encourage people to have a relationship with God, because only God can bring them the happiness, the prosperity, or whatever they're looking for. We cannot. So those kibbutzim, they were doing good deeds, but they were replacing God for those people who needed the one true God in their lives. And that's what the welfare system does, and makes people rely on anything else but God. And we need to remember that the objective here is for people to rely on God and nothing else or nobody else. That includes the people we want to do good to, or the good we accept from others as well.
Right.
So
voting for a guy who says that he is going to destroy you is probably not a very good decision to make.
Well, I don't think anyone goes and runs politically on a political campaign that we're going to destroy people, but they say things that appeal. And this is where I have been noticing there's a lot of appeal to emotion rather than clear thinking facts and so forth. And that is something that we need to be careful.
Yeah, but if you say that you're going to defund the police, and Momdani has come out and said that he...
Yeah, but people support that because of the police brutality that has been brought on because of the rioting, because people have made... Like, it's all a vicious circle.
Yeah. But if you don't have police protection, then it is vigilantism, and you don't have the weapons that they have.
Yeah.
So, all that being said, Yeshua is still sovereign. He's still on the throne. And he warned us that this would happen. And, in the end, we win. But it is not going to be an easy ride over the next little bit. And we have to gird ourselves up and be prepared for some very, very tumultuous times. But as we press into the Lord and as we trust him, we will be delivered and we will be victorious.
God is with his people.
He is, and if we end up, giving our lives for the sake of the gospel, then we go to be with him and have a much better situation than we do now. So we want to thank everybody for joining us. It was an intense conversation today, and you had some great insights. So thank you for sharing those. And we just want to wish everybody a Shavua Tov, a great week. And we'll look forward to seeing you right here again next Sunday on the Threshing Floor. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
There it is.
I won't run from the crushing. I'll hold on through the pain. What I lose means nothing.
If you missed today's show or want to watch it again, or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lamnetwork.tv, where you can find this show and all the other live Lamb Show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network.
I just wanna be your sanctuary, a dwelling place for grace and mercy. Keep sifting me till everything is on the threshing floor.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take a tour of the lamnetwork.tv website. I'm Darryl Weinberg, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.